Hello and welcome to the program Law and Order. My name is Martia Umar. Today on Law and Order, we will be discussing mob justice, and some people call it jungle justice, but it's mob justice and the law, whichever way you want to call it. But in Nigeria, mob justice is fast becoming a pastime as people regularly take the law into their hands. And according to reports, more than 190 people have been murdered extrajudicially in the past 2 years. Deborah Samuel, a student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, Sokoto, was killed by angry mobs for allegedly making blasphemous statements about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Most worrying about this recourse to mob justice is that a lot of times, innocent citizens are often the victims. What about the brutal murder of 4 innocent undergraduates of the University of Port Harcourt in 2012? For instance, was a case in point. And 5 years after the incident, the court pronounced their innocent, while 4 of the identified murderers were sentenced to death. Of the Alufo and that of Deborah and all the cases that have been reported as a result of mob justice in Nigeria, there's a need for us to talk about it. But why do some Nigerians take the law into their own hands? Because clearly, mob justice, or jungle justice as it's popularly known, is taking the law into your own hands. In 2016, an anti-jungle justice bill was passed. Where we are now with the bill and other laws that prohibit mob justice or jungle justice in Nigeria will be our focus. This and many more will be our focus on the program today on Law and Order. Joining us to discuss this is Mutia Kinsanya, Esquire, a human rights lawyer vast in the common law and also the Sharia law, because when we want to talk about jungle justice, we have to understand that the 2 dominant religions in Nigeria do not accept jungle justice. But if they do accept, you'll be the one to tell us today. But thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So there's a lot to talk about when you say jungle justice. A lot of people have given reasons that, the judiciary has failed us. It takes a lot of time for us to get to know the fate of these people in court. And we just want to take the law into our own hands, or people want to take the laws into their own hands. What do you think is the problem? Has the judiciary failed us?
Not entirely, because we're all part of the system. And if the system has failed us, that means we've failed ourselves. But I do not think that the system has failed us entirely. It's also important I say that for every offense, it is always alleged. And there's always a presumption of innocence under all of our laws. And that's why you have a system in place that will have to ensure that the person who is alleged to have committed an offense really committed the offense. And to also ensure that the person was not under any kind of circumstance that takes away his mind of thinking correctly. So there's always a system in place, and it is because of that system in place that we're all living. If there is no system in place, I do not think we'll be here, because the entire society will be lawless, there will be no order, and then there will be no peace. Yes.
People would say crime is a crime, which a lot of people agree to. When people do the smallest things, I wouldn't want to say the smallest things, because a crime is a crime at the end of the day. Maybe getting into a shop, stealing a phone, or even as small as a seasoning, a cube of seasoning. There's penalty. People rush in, try to, go on these people, or take on these people without even the court of competent jurisdiction coming into to pronounce this person as guilty. According to the law, how do we explain mob justice, and what's the stance of the law of mob justice in Nigeria?
Okay. Mob justice is jungle justice, like you said, and it is not justice at all, because the person alleged or the person who is mobbed was never given an opportunity to even raise a defense or to really speak about what may have transpired. in most cases as humans, what we see may not really be the reality. And that's why, like I said, even in our law in Nigeria and even in all parts of the world, there's always that presumption of innocence, you know, and until an alleged offender is proved guilty, nobody can just resort to self-help to say we want to deal with him or we want to deal with her. And we must also put ourselves in the shoes of people who may be victims, and that's when we will understand it better. Because you've had, like you talked about the Alufo, after several years, it was then found that they were innocent. But at the heat of the action, those who mobbed them thought perhaps they were doing the right thing. Perhaps some of those who killed them only heard from a distance of the allegation. They were not even there to even see whether it happened or not. And they never bothered to ask questions. They simply just carried out that action within just the heat of the moment. And I'm sure even for them, wherever they are today, it will be a huge regret that if they had known, they should have tarried a while to really confirm whether the allegation that was made against them was true. So the law is created for all of us. And if you have a lawless society, I'm sure nobody will be able to live in this world. And that's why when the law says that there are procedures, it's very important that we're patient to allow that procedure takes its full course. Because whoever is guilty, with our support and with whatever evidence that we're able to get, that person will definitely be found guilty at the end of the day. And that person will definitely face the wrath of the law. But again, of course, the argument is that you have instances where alleged criminals were perhaps found guilty and they were left off the hook, or that the system in place did not work properly to ensure that they are brought to book. On that, again, I will say we have to blame ourselves because we're also part of the system, you know. And in most cases, and which I know we have discussed even on this program at a point in time, most of us are even not ready to even serve as witnesses in court. Most of us are even not ready to cooperate with the law enforcement agents when it comes to...
Isn't that because when you serve as a witness, at one point or the other, you're roped in as a suspect? A lot of people have experienced that. Isn't that the cause? And why do we have that, you know, coming into some of these cases?
Yes, you see, we do not have a perfect system, but we almost really understand that it takes two to tango. We must all work together. If we sit back and then complain and allow the issue of mob justice or jungle justice to take over our society, we may not be victims today, but if we allow it to continue, someday we may also be at the receiving end. And I pray that does not happen. And that's why in every society you have laws and you have procedures. And these laws and procedures are made for human beings. And the reason why you have these laws and procedure is because it is better you have them and follow them than not having them at all. Yes, because if you do not have them, then you have a lawless society. You have a society that is disorderly. You have a society where, for instance, I can get up and then slap you, and then I will say, oh, I just thought you had done something, you know? You can just call boys out and say, oh, I want you to just deal with him and beat him up. So it then becomes a society where it's only the strong or those who are wealthy or those who have the power that will then oppress those who do not have power. And that's why, you know, we have what's called equality under the law. We're all equal before the law. And that's the doctrine of not resorting to self-help. That's the doctrine of having a rule of law and allowing the rule of law to really thrive. And this is something that you have under all laws. You have it under the common law, you have it under the Sharia law, you have it under all kinds of law across the world.
So now, in Nigeria, it takes a lot of time for us to act, especially when it comes to the judiciary sector, I must confess. You know, the Alufo opened our eyes to the mob justice, which has been happening long before Alufo.
Yeah.
I think the first one that happened was, in the 80s when it did happen, and everybody saw it like, if this didn't happen, then maybe they wouldn't have gotten the justice that they deserve. Now, in 2016, Senator Dino Melaye was a senator at that time, came up with this anti-jungle justice. That was 4 years after the Alufo happened. This law would have, or somebody must have sponsored this law, or should have sponsored the law, even before 2016, but nothing was done. He came up with the law. But right now, it passed first reading, it passed second reading, but it seems it has not seen the light of the day, and then there's nothing like implementation. Why do we have that long time before we have such laws being enacted and then implemented in the country?
Yes, you see, the truth about even passage of laws is that it's only when you have circumstances demanding you to have a law that our legislators take it very seriously. And it's not only in this part of the world, it's everywhere in the world. There must be a circumstance that demands you to really have a law in place. And I think for me, there is no time that is better than now to really criminalize mob actions. When people also get to know that there is a penalty, or that even mob action in itself is an offense, people would definitely then desist from embarking on mob action. So people would, if you look at our laws, for instance, our laws even allows private persons to also make arrests. Arrests are not made only by police officers.
The vigilante we have.
Yes, the vigilante, even a private person like myself,
okay.
if a crime is committed in my vicinity and I'm able to arrest the culprit, the law allows me to make that arrest. But then I must then ensure that I hand over the suspect to the law enforcement agents, the police particularly. Yeah, so if people get to know that, we can arrest, but then we cannot execute the punishments, and if we proceed to say we want to execute this punishment, it's also an offense. People will then desist and then ensure that the right things are done. But as it is today, you have mob actions every day, almost every day. Almost every day, yes. And particularly in Lagos, for instance, there's been several news from Lagos of people who are alleged to have stolen certain things, and then they were just killed. Some of them were burnt to death. And we have not really come out strongly to really speak against those things. And those who perpetrate these things, they will tell you that, there's a justification for it, or they tell you that, no, we were provoked by that act, you understand. But the truth is that it's not even a justification for mob action, but that you're provoked by somebody who stole something, or that you feel you're justified to kill the person because you think that police officers or the law enforcement agents will not do anything. It's not a reason.
So there's no case for provocation here on the part of people who have been provoked as a result of the act that was perpetrated by the victim of the mob action?
Yes, you see, even under our laws, provocation is not a complete defense, assuming you even have provocation. The best provocation can do is even to reduce, if A alleges that he was being provoked, for instance, to kill B, the best that A can get is to get a lesser offense of, say, maybe from murder to manslaughter.
Okay.
You understand? But it's not a complete defense. And what I'm saying here is that somebody killed somebody because of the justification of provocation is not a defense. The person will still be punished under the law. So if people understand this fact, a lot of people will decide not to take laws into their hands. A lot of people will simply allow the law to take its course to punish those who are alleged to have committed any kind of offense. And you must also understand that even our laws recognizes the fact that it is better you allow several persons who are guilty of an offense to go free than to convict a single innocent person. And that's why the law is very careful not just to allow people to reach a conclusion without hearing from the other sides. And unfortunately, most of the people that are victims are not alive to even tell their stories. after they've been mobbed. You know, we just talk and then assume several things about them. They're not there to really defend themselves. And that's really what we must really ponder about. And that should really encourage us to speak out against this kind of jungle justice anywhere it occurs.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people are saying that, you know, there's a law, even before the anti-jungle justice or anti-lynching law was proposed to the Senate. There have been laws that prohibits jungle justice in Nigeria. What are some of these laws?
If you look at our criminal code and our criminal code and the penal code, murder is an offense. Yeah, and so if anybody participates in any act that leads to any other person losing his or her life, it's murder.
Are there exceptions to that?
But there are no exceptions. There are no exceptions. So if anybody participates in a mob action and then somebody is killed, it's more than you have a lot of cases even that have come before our courts, and the courts will not even allow people to justify the fact that, oh, the person committed this act and that's why we decided to kill the person at the spot. No law will allow that to be justified. Yeah.
Okay, if you're just joining us, this is Law and Order, and we're talking about mob justice and the law. Some people know it as jungle justice. We'll go for this short break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is still Law and Order, where we talk about the law and the rights of humans. If your rights have been violated, what you need to do, and generally knowing what the law says about you as a Nigerian, about how you do things, because the law cut across every aspect of our lives. And today we're talking about mob justice and, you know, the repercussion, what the law says about mob justice, or jungle justice, as it is popularly known in this part of the world. So discussing this, we've had, we're still having a legal practitioner. Like I said in the beginning, he's very vast with the common law and the Sharia law. So that's the best person to talk about this with, because you have to compare. You know, some people say, oh, the common law says this, the Sharia law says this. And, you know, there's this contradiction, who is right, what is not right. But at the end of the day, these two laws are recognized in Nigeria. Yeah. So before the break, we were talking about laws that prohibit jungle justice in the country. So you talked about the penal code and also the criminal code that prohibits murder of any kind, and you said there was no exception to that. What are some of these cases? Because sometimes when you tell people, you know, there are no exceptions, they just want to be schooled about some of these cases. I don't know if a lot of people go to the court, but when you get to the court, you know what we are actually talking about. But that's the essence of the program. So go ahead. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you. So the issue of mob actions in Nigeria, unfortunately, we do not have so much of those cases that have gone to court. I think you have more mob actions where those who participate in those actions just went scot-free and nobody really followed up, you know. And for me, that's also a challenge even to our law enforcement agents. The law enforcement agents need to really be up and doing when it even comes to also ensuring that those who are engaged in these kind of actions are also brought to book. If you bring them to book like the ALU 4, that we know that those who perpetrated that act were convicted at the end of the day, it will send a strong signal and then make us in this part of the world understand that taking laws into our hands or seeking for self-help is not the best way to help the society get rid of all of those menaces. So having said that, but you have few examples that the courts have really decided upon. But the truth is that no justification whatsoever for those cases that the courts have decided, no justification whatsoever was accepted by the courts to allow people who are involved to go scot-free. You have instances where, for instance, people will say, oh, we were provoked, or maybe I was provoked and that is why I did what I did, you understand? But the court will still hold that, oh, your provocation is not really enough defense. Yes, because you were provoked does not give you the license or the liberty to take the life of the alleged victim.
Culprit.
Yes, or the culprit. Yeah. So we must really understand that. And one very popular case that even people have cited most recently is Shala versus State. And I think that was a matter that emanated from Kebbi State, got to the Court of Appeal, and also finally got to the Supreme Court, where some individuals took the laws into their hands and then killed a fellow human like them. And of course, their defense was that they were provoked and that they had justification for what they did. But the Supreme Court, also headed by at that time, the lead judgment was delivered by the present CJN, Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, and his decision in that matter was clear, that no matter what must have happened, nothing can justify taking a human life. That the best that anybody can do in that circumstance is to get the alleged culprit arrested, and then you hand him or her over to the law enforcement agents. And it's the law enforcement agents that will then charge the individual to court. And then the judicial process will then determine whether that person really committed the offense or not. And then also determine what kind of punishment should be meted out to that person. And that's why everywhere in the world, you have institutions that are saddled with certain responsibilities. You have constituted authorities. And we're all enjoined to differ certain things to constituted authorities, you understand? Because if you have constituted authorities, like I said earlier on, you can be sure that there will be law and order. You can be sure that there will be no chaos. Even when you feel that the constituted authorities or that the system is not giving you what you think is the best, you then challenge the system. Because we all owe a duty to ensure that the system gives us what is the best. If, for instance, we feel, oh, over the years we've not been getting justice from the system, then we must all interact with the system and ensure that we get a very good system that will ensure that those who are criminals are always brought to book. But if we sit back and feel that, no, let the system be, and then we'll always resort to self-help, tomorrow it may be those of us who are carrying out the action or carrying out the self-help. It may be our brother, it may be our sister, it may be somebody who is very close to us. And perhaps at that point in time, we'll be able to speak and say, no, but that person was innocent, you know. But it may be too late, because the life of that person may have been taken before we even come out to explain to the world, or before the world will come to understand that, oh, that person was innocent. And that's why under all of our laws, under the Sharia law, under the common law, under our laws generally, that presumption of innocence is always there. And the system that is put in place must interact to then ensure that that alleged crime is proved before punishment can then be meted out. Yeah.
So the families of these victims of jungle justice, you know, at some point, you know, are helpless. Some people don't even know what to do, and it's their responsibility to seek for justice for the victim of this mob action. What should they do? Will they go about seeking for justice for the victim if it happens eventually?
Yes, if this happens, I think the families must really not be laid back. The families must ensure that they seek justice for the victim, because it's not only about the victim, it's about the entire society. The person who is the victim today definitely is already at the receiving end. But if they do not also ensure that justice is served, it means that people out there will see it as a normal thing, and then it will continue, and then it will increase. But even beyond the family of the victims of mob actions, I think for me it's a responsibility of all of us. We must really keep educating people so people will understand that mob justice or mob actions are not justice at all. Like we call it, it's jungle justice. And jungle justice is not justice at all. It's not justice for the person who is mobbed. It's not justice for those who are carrying out the mob. And it's not justice for the entire society. Because it's not going to make the society better. In fact, in my humble opinion, it makes the society even worse. Because when you keep having actions like that again and again, and again, you would, at a point in time, have mobbed somebody who is innocent. And that's why in our societies, you will have a lot of people who will talk about the fact that they've experienced this thing at a point in time or the other. And really, they were innocent. And you know, when it comes to mob actions, perhaps even when the thing happened, maybe it's only one person that was there. And that one person may do it out of malice, you know, but when people keep gathering and gathering, they just feel, no, what is said about this person is what it is. And they only just come together and then they carry out the action. So for me, I think it's something that the family members of victims should condemn, but it's a responsibility for all of us to really condemn and educate people to follow the right procedure.
All right, thank you very much. If not because of time, there's a lot to ask about mob justice or jungle justice as it's been called and what the law says about it. But thank you so much for educating us and opening our eyes to some of the things the law have said about mob justice that we didn't know about. Thank you so much.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being a part of the program today. Like you heard, jungle justice is no justice at all. And at any point, should you take the laws into your hands, you have to follow the right procedures. And that's it on the program today. You join us next week for more. My name is Martia Umar. But for more updates on Law and Order and what goes on in Trust Television, do not forget to follow us across all our social media platforms. Thank you for being a part of the show. I'll see you again.